Nice to meet you guys.
Nice to meet you guys
Likewise.
too. Thanks for taking time to hang out with us today.
Yeah.
Our pleasure.
Okay,
it's so much more fun than just writing. Like, this is a break from writing. We get to like share our joy of what we're creating.
That's very true. So I can kind of see your like little geeky collections behind you, which I love. So as Nikki said, we have a podcast, Geek Girls Universe. So geeks to geeks. I think the first question we have to ask is, did you grow up as Trekkies? What is your level of geek when it comes to that fandom?
Our level of geek, I mean, we're film guys. Dan looks like he's frozen, but
no, I'm just not moving.
Oh, you're just not moving. We're film guys. So yes, we grew up with the Star Wars movies. We grew up with the Star Trek films. That I would say the Star Trek films was what really molded us. And like
we thought we were Goonies. I think we thought we were Goonies. We were
Goonies and all the Gremlins and all the Steven Spielberg stuff is our favorites. But like that's when I think you watch Prodigy, you'll see that sort of, if you had to compare it to any other Star Trek property, it would be probably the movies, because we wanted that big,
specifically Wrath of Khan, like little things going in your ear, Spock dying, like these are like massive moments where you're like, oh my god.
Well, it's emotional, right? And so we wanted to really bring not just the intellectual but the emotional to Star Trek.
Got it. I think Jana's like gonna lose it because she was just talking about Wrath of Khan with me earlier.
I think Wrath of Khan is the single movie that made me maybe not be a Trekkie, because the moment that larva goes in the ear, I was like, I'm out. Like I can't. It ruined me.
I was like 7 years old when
I think I still have nightmares.
Like, oh my god, yeah.
I think I still have nightmares from that. But no, we literally just before this, I was like, if you had to tell me a single moment as to when I would be like, nope, I'm out. That was it.
Yeah. Well, did you ever get back in?
This is, I mean, obviously, like we watch this series, my kids love it. The animation from this is beautiful. And I don't want to really skip around our questions because we kind of had a little bit of an order, but like this is one of those that there's so much stuff in it that's, pulled from other franchises, not franchises directly, but like sort of just sci-fi nods, right? Like Easter eggs, but the animation is gorgeous. And I think it's one of those that it's a show for anybody. Like you don't have to be a Trekkie. You don't have to be a super hardcore sci-fi nerd. It's something that anybody, any age can connect with. And what is it about the show that makes it that from you guys? Like, what do you think that
was, that's the intent. That's when like Alex Kurtzman came to us. He wanted a show that was an on-ramp, right? For kids, for Dan and I, we write for kids, but we write for ourselves too. And we write for adults. And like, I think it's harder. It's some of the hardest, I think, writing is to do a story that can capture everyone, right? And it's the heart, it's the emotion.
Well, no, but I also think that like we put equal weight on the new and the old. Like we're always going, we don't want to just sit there and be in a hot tub full of nostalgia. We want to make sure that there's new characters, like it's not about Janeway, it's about these characters. And we want to make sure that there's new characters for fans to clamor onto, because new fans don't really care about any of that nostalgia stuff. They want to know what's new. So I think we have a good foot in. Our writers' room is mixed with some people who have never seen Star Trek, and some people who have been watching Star Trek from the day they were born. So we want to always have those conversations to make sure that it works for both audiences.
I'm probably less of a Trekkie than Jana, because I never watched Wrath of Khan. I only know Sir Patrick Stewart's Star Trek. Because I'm like, sure. I was a kid and that used to come on. It was like UPN channel 20 or something during the week. Yep. So that's my level of knowledge. But I'd like kind of bouncing off of that Easter egg question. So even with my limited knowledge, obviously we did catch, I could figure out, right? I was like, this is definitely like a callback to something. And then, there's the other sci-fis and fantasy properties kind of, the vibe, I guess, kind of woven in there. But was that important for you to include that in there? And do you have any particular favorites?
Like the Easter egg, or which specifically?
Favorite, like influences?
Like Easter egg, or maybe like a scene that's almost like an influence from, some other fantasy product, whichever.
Oh, like Lord of the Ring. Like we I think we just have like, as fans, I think everyone on the crew is a geek of some sort. So you're always pulling upon certain things. I think in episode episode 5, I think we have a Lord of the Rings pull when they're hiding.
I think the greatest pull, the biggest influence that you'll see throughout the entire concept of the show is the Goonies, about a bunch of kids who there's something really big at stake, and it's your last adventure. It's the twilight of childhood. It's this last chance at being together and daring to do something great in the face of the adult world, right?
The Easter eggs alone, I think, are something that really just kind of draw everybody in. Again, pick a franchise, pick your favorite sci-fi fandom, right? Like you've got the Lord of the Rings callbacks. It's the Fellowship of the Rings, right? Like it's the Dread Dock, like they're hiding, and like there's this whole scene. Yeah, that was so great. And there's like the invisibility cloaks, and there's, Dahl does his like Jack Sparrow impression, and I think it's the very first episode, like Dahl tells Rok-Tahk to find the pew pew button, and it's like just things like that you're like, oh, this is so good, and it's just so loaded with things. There's something for everybody, and it's so great.
Right.
Kind of back to that animation question, and another callback, right? Like the holographs are like direct tie-ins to like the 70s animated version of Star Trek, which I think is like
the
super
LCARs,
cool.
like the screens or the
yes.
That
So
is
cool.
like that fans take it very seriously, the LCARs and the controls. And so we learned, like, we need to get a really good artist who knows what they're doing. We can't just add a button or a joystick.
I remember early on when they first did the LCARs, they were all very futuristic, and the colors were very like blue and purple. And we're like, we need to see like the old classic Trek, like salmon and orange.
A little bit
we need
peach.
to see those like classic Trek colors, avocado green,
Very 70s, yeah. But so this show is very, it's 3D versus like those traditional 2D animations. What made you, I mean, obviously, like it's sort of the, we'll go with like the genre, everybody's doing that, right? Like nobody's doing a lot of, I shouldn't say nobody, but 2D isn't really what people are doing. But what made you specifically go with the 3D versus that 2D look for Prodigy?
Well, I think it's the closest thing for a cinematic feel. Like I think animated movies, we also think about these characters need to live in a world in which you feel like it can cross over into live action. We want it to feel real.
I mean, we're telling Janeway's next chapter, right? And we're going to have other characters coming in from the known universe, and we didn't want to be this little separate kids show over to the right, where everyone had these big bobbleheads and big eyes, and no, we wanted to try to make the humans look somewhat real so that we can actually have our characters working with the other shows. Yeah, and
Kevin and I we always want to make sure the writing is emotional and that you feel for these characters. And so for us, we love the shots where it's like super close to a person's face and they're just breathing and they're just existing. And that's what makes them feel real. It feels like you know who these characters are.
I agree. It definitely does feel cinematic. That's when I was watching the first episode, I think it was like the first couple shots, I was like, this is an animated show, right? Like, it just kind of threw me because I was like, this feels very like I'm sitting and watching a movie, but
right.
So it's great. And I love the characters. They're so fun. They're an eclectic group. Definitely. I love I always mess up the names, but the rock one.
Rok-Tahk.
Rok-Tahk, yes.
Riley Alcazar. She plays pronounce her last name, Kim.
Oh, I don't want to say it.
I'm glad I'm not the only one that's like.
I have to see it. I need to see it to pronounce it.
Alzaraki.
Alzaraki.
I don't know.
She's amazing.
But she was a gem. I think originally when we were looking at maybe older actresses that could sound younger, and then she came in. We're like, no, she really is the heart of the crew. Where she was an 8-year-old when we hired her, and so she has that feel of like, what would it be like an 8-year-old on a starship?
She's growing up, and I've told her and her family, I go, if our show keeps going, don't worry, we're not going to recast you. We're just going to have Rok-Tahk grow up, because that's what the show's all about, this youth growing up.
She kind of reminds me of, I don't know if you were also anime nerds, but Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, Alphonse. She's like the Alphonse character to me.
I haven't seen it. I'm familiar with the title, but sorry.
Well, if you ever watch it, you'll get the reference. But so if you guys could pick one of the crew to travel across the galaxy and have an adventure with, who would it be and why?
Oh, hologram Janeway, because I wouldn't know what to do.
I don't know, because for me, Dal would be an absolute blast. Him and I would totally like have a great buddy trip. And then also I think I do have a little crush on Gwen. So that would be a great trip too.
Okay, that's just creepy.
That's amazing.
You have both worked on like a lot of live action properties as well as animated properties. Do you have a preference for playing in one of those sandboxes over the other?
Wait, over, I'm sorry, what sandboxes? Over
Live action versus animated.
Oh.
I animated, I mean, they both have their pros and cons. I think with animation, you can fix mistakes a little bit more than you can in live action. But in live action, you're getting performances from people who are unexpected at times, and so there could be more humanity in live action. It's tough. I mean, I do feel like some of the best movies are animated, and part of the reason is that they can continue to go back, depending on resources, to fix what's not working quite right. So, yeah.
I was just going to add, like, I find a bigger difference between writing film and TV. In writing in TV, as a writer, you get to be the showrunner, and it's so fun, and you get to call the shots, and you're in charge, and you get to work with the composer and the artists and the directors and the costume design and all. You know, as a film writer, you get none of that. You get fired.
Of the barrel.
You usually get paid to write something, and then you get pushed off. That's the life.
You also have a phenomenal voice cast for something like this. I mean, not that your other shows don't necessarily have them, but this is a phenomenal voice cast. And I think that makes a huge difference too. Like, you must have some great stories working with some of these guys.
Well, I love that Kate Mulgrew is like, she'll come in and like she will go through 3 or 4 episodes in a very quick time because she knows the character so well. So we rarely, the only reason we have to get a second take is just for security, to make sure that there was no bobbles or cracks in the report.
Well, yeah, you get, first of all, we have phenomenal actors playing the new characters. But yeah, with Kate, or, sometimes even, with Admiral Jellicoe, or when we start pulling characters from the Trek universe, she's lived with that character for how many years? Like, she knows, her headspace. And so she brings little stuff that, like, this is what Janeway would do. And I'm like, oh, or she'd say it this way, or not use this word and use this word. And so, and then the new cast, yeah, we worked so hard. And there's people like, like Jenkum Pog, we wanted like a young, like Danny DeVito. But we're like, well, who's going to be like a younger Danny DeVito? We're like, Jason Mantzoukas is just like exactly that. And like, we were the biggest fans of his, and we fought so hard to get him, and he's just perfect, right?
Or a Medusa, a genderless voice, and we remember Angus Embry from The Kid Who Would Be King.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, The King Who Would Be King. And then Gwen, we auditioned so many actresses, and there were some fantastic ones. And then Ella read, and it was just like, she's the most phenomenal actress, and it just all comes out, the
vulnerability,
just her voice, and she's just stunning.
She had to be both strong and vulnerable, which is a difficult combo.
The second half of season 1 just started streaming not too long ago. What can, obviously no spoilers, but what can fans kind of expect from what we haven't seen yet and kind of that big season finale?
I'll just say, like, I think of, these 20 episodes as one giant mini series. It's one giant story. And yeah, there's little chapters and little fun episode concepts. Like, just this last night, we dropped a holodeck gone awry, sort of classic Star Trek episode, but it all is pieces into one grand 20 episode story. And so I'm so excited because we have just 3 more episodes after, coming. And if you think of it as a mini series, we're entering our 3rd act. It's like, this is one giant movie, right? And it's going to get big, and it's going to be surprising and emotional.
Yeah, and Kevin and I have said this before, where we've written nearly 200 episodes of animated television, and I think episode 20 is our favorite. So
yeah, by
Well,
far.
that makes me excited to see it. That's
You
like high
gotta-
praise.
You gotta watch it. I promise you, it's gonna be so worth it. The ending.
We know season 2 is also confirmed. Is there anything you can tell us about it? Hints, surprises,
He's like,
obviously
no,
nothing
no.
spoilery. But you know, I
it's
know,
gonna be
I know,
so
like,
far
now I'm
away,
like, oh
though.
man, I
I
have
feel like
10
it'll
more
be a
episodes to catch up on.
Yeah. I'm trying to think, what can we say, Dan, that's not spoilery?
It's
You
a
know.
it's a there's a we could say the Chakotay storyline continues on in season 2.
Oh, definitely, in a major way. So there's going to be a lot. We're even more, I think, nostalgic Star Trek you'll see in our show in season 2 now, because our characters are heading into Federation space in season 1. So we're meeting more and more characters. So there'll be a lot more of that. And then also, just on a grand scale, it's a serialized world that we're creating for these characters. These are kids growing up and changing. And so we want an evolution. We want them growing up, and there's going to be difficult things that are going to be happening and new, but just as like in season 1, we're seeing Murph change, there's going to be changes coming ahead for our cast.
Well, Dan and Kevin, thank you so much for your time today. We look forward to wrapping up the end of this season and then obviously season 2. So thank you so much.
Thank you guys. I love it. I love the tag team. You're like two sisters.